Hey, Reg here, and welcome to the channel. First of all, I want to let you guys know today's video is going to be a little different than the series Food for Thought, and it's not necessarily a rant, but there will be some elements of rant, so just to look out for them. Before I start, however, I want to give a couple of shout outs. I want to give one shout out to Crazy Old Vegan and that channel, which I shouted out in my video on the video that I put up yesterday, but I didn't really give any space to shouting out that channel. And I've been having some communications with Crazy Old Vegan, and really celebrating the diversity that has been being discovered amongst certain vegan YouTubers. There's just this kind of emerging diversity amongst a group of YouTubers that I'm really grateful for. Another person that I want to shout is Brooke from Crazy Running Mom. I'm so sorry, Crazy Running Mom. And Brooke. And I want to say that I took a look at that channel yesterday and was really just blown away by how inspired I was. And I started with some of the more recent videos, which were about, one was really just kind of a recommendation for some things to watch on Netflix. And then another was about running. And there was another one that really talked about the idea that not every vegan is, a stick figure model. Not to say that it's bad to be a stick figure model. That's one body type, but there are vegans with all kinds of body types. I have a body type that's just different than other people. I'm not going to make videos with, I might do a video with my clothes off, and I've done, videos with my shirt off and stuff like that. But, I don't have a body that anyone would, nobody's going to hire me to be like swimsuit model or anything like that. And that's okay, because that's not how I make my living. So something else that I wanted to talk about, I caught a video, the racism test that was put out by Grade A Under A, the channel Grade A Under A, and it's this, and it was this sort of musing on the idea that if you can't tell one type of Asian person from another type of Asian person, and you get called out for being a racist, that's stupid. Well, yeah, maybe it's not easy to tell someone who's Chinese from someone who's Japanese if you're not part of either one of those cultures. But if you call someone who is Japanese, if you call them Chinese, or you make the assumption that they're Chinese, and they call you out and say, you should be more aware, like if they get frustrated by that, understand that it's not about you. It's about an experience that they're having in that moment, and maybe the thing to do is just apologize, not to make a video about how foolish it is to, call someone a racist. Another thing is I want to call out people for calling out people as racist. I don't think it's possible to be a racist, but I think it's very easy to do things or have attitudes that are racist. And I say that because racism, from my understanding, is the construction, it is the maintenance, and is the exploitation of a system that prefers one ethnic group over another and bestows favor and resources and access upon that group, while denying favor and access and resources to another group. So it's not about the emotions. It's not about whether you like someone or whether or not. It is whether or not you have access to resources solely based on the color of your skin, and someone else does not have access to resources based on the color of their skin. Now, The construction of that system, that already happened. And, there may be people who are making tweaks here and there to make sure it keeps running, but that has more to do with the maintenance of that system. And the maintenance of that system happens in ways that are sometimes very insidious, and sometimes it happens through something called microaggressions. And these are the ways that we continue to instill racist values on people, and it's the way that we might continue to internalize racist values, or the way that we try to diminish others who may start to think too much of themselves. Like a black person who starts to think too much of themselves, there are ways to remind them that they're black and for that reason not entitled to certain resources. And it can happen in the simplest way, simply by saying, by calling out someone's race in a way that is, not called for. Like if we're all having a good time and we're at a party and everybody's just getting to be who they are, and then somebody gets called out for their race, like, oh, it's so interesting what you do with your hair. And it's about the person having, typically, hair that people from Africa or diasporan people have. So calling out that person for their race in that situation is alienating. And that is a part of the maintenance of a racist system, right? Reminding people who they are and what their position, and thereby what their position is in the society. And unfortunately, you don't have to even say anything negative about them, because that part happens in other places, right? So the negative part of racism is being taken care of in another place, while the kind of shining a light on race and that type of identity happens in another place. Because remember, the race part itself, just the calling out someone as blacks, identifying someone as white, is part of racism. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is privilege. And I hope that this doesn't start to go on for too long. I want to talk. There are people who kind of like get really their backs up about privilege in general, and it's like, well, why am I being called out for being privileged, or what? I don't get it. I don't understand privilege, and I want to try to explain privilege in a way that makes sense, especially for vegans. I want think of a huge banquet, and at that banquet, there's every kind of food that you can imagine, right? And some people are allowed to eat anything they want from the table, while others can only eat the peas. Now, if you run out of peas, that means those people, they just can't eat. I'm sorry, we're not going to let you eat. We're not going to let you eat corn instead. No, because you're only allowed to eat peas. Now, if I'm a person who's only allowed to eat peas, and someone who's allowed to eat anything that they want at that table comes to take some peas, I might feel a little resentful, because I might think, hey man, just there's only a certain amount of peas, and we're trying, the folks who are the pea eaters are trying to make sure that we have enough, and so when you take some, that means that there's less for us, and you get to eat anything that you want from the rest of the table, and there's plenty of that, so please, can you just eat that? Now, if I'm the person who's allowed to eat anything, and somebody tells me I can't eat peas, I'm gonna feel bad. I'm gonna be like, why? I want to eat peas. I like peas. In fact, peas are the only thing that I like. Even though I have access to anything, I really only like peas, and that's valid. But you have to understand when the person who can only eat peas is hurt, is upset, feels resentful because of your choice to eat peas when you could have eaten anything at the table. Now, also in the opposite, if someone who only eats peas decides they want some turkey, someone who's allowed to eat turkey might feel resentful that this person is trying to take some of their turkey. They're only supposed to be eating peas, and if they take turkey, they're going to be taking away some of the thing that I like to eat, even though I can eat anything, but I really like turkey. Is the person feeling resentful of having to give up their turkey valid? Yes, it is totally valid. But the question is it just? And is it just for the person who can eat anything to want peas when there are some people who can only eat peas? Is that just? So that's kind of the point that I wanted to make. And when one does not have privilege, and they try to point out to someone who does have privilege, which is honestly invisible, right? You can't see privilege, you can only experience privilege. And if privilege is your norm, then you're not even experiencing privilege, it just is. But when you don't have privilege, that is easier to feel, and it's easier to experience. So if you're a person with privilege and you bump up against a person who doesn't have privilege, there are likely going to be sparks, and they're going to be sparks that you may not understand. And I think it becomes a little bit unfair and a little bit of a meaningless task for the person with privilege to try to explain away the sparks as opposed to just experiencing the sparks and identifying and accepting that those sparks are going to happen because they do not have an understanding of what it means to lack privilege in that area. Now, privilege isn't universal. There are people who have privilege in one area of their life, like, for example, I experience a lot of male privilege. And so when I bump up against a woman who's not experiencing male privilege, I have to take a step back and be like, I don't know what that's like. However, there are times when I don't experience privilege because I'm a person of color. Now, I'm not going to harp on that. I'm just going to say that I hope that is an example that people have understood, and I hope it doesn't just come off as like BS, because I didn't intend for it to be that way, and I also don't intend for these ideas to be all-encompassing. They're just a way to explain it to people who may not really be understanding these concepts and might need, just another way of looking at it. All that said, I think all of this is to finally say, I'm just really grateful to have the opportunity to share these ideas with folks and to have people who are willing to listen. I recently went past 50,000 views on the channel, which, is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. But to me, as someone who's not a YouTuber by occupation, it's a kind of a big deal. It made me feel good. It was a little bit like what Brooke said when you cross a finish line. Even if you're someone who runs marathons and you do a 5K run, crossing that finish line is still going to feel good. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. I hope you have a wonderful time celebrating the new year if you're doing that today, or if you did that yesterday. I hope that 2016 has great to offer you. And that said, please do continue to love yourself, and peace.